It's time for the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. Stay tuned as we discuss local and national sports from Southeast Missouri and beyond. The Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle is brought to you by Royal Retros. If you like cool throwback jerseys of defunct sports teams, Royal Retros is the place to buy. If you go to royalretros.com and you order with the code SPORTSDESK, all one word, you can get a little bit off your order. So check out Royal Retros. And now on with the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. And welcome back to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And we are joined today by a very special guest, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Corbin Clark. I'm a current assistant principal at Poplar Bluff High School and former area basketball coach. Served time as assistant coach at Holcomb High School and the head basketball coach at St. Hornersville High School, Kennett High School, and Gosnell, Arkansas as well.
Yep, and a little bit of cool trivia. Back in the late 2000s when I was sports editor at the then Daily Dunkel Democrat in Kennett, Corbin freelanced for me when he was still in high school, and now he has come full circle and is the assistant principal of my old high school, sitting in the seat of the legendary Howard Garrett and Jim Daniels. And guys, we got a full show this week, but we're going to start off by talking a lot of high school basketball, kind of a recap of what was going on last week and in the last few days. One of the big things that happened is they had the Clarkton Christmas tournament last week. South Pemiscot won that tournament. Looked pretty good doing it. And, Mark, I know you followed Risco a lot in the past. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen Risco play. I know that
that's who they beat, by the way.
Yeah, but they lost Sammy, was his last name Smith?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sammy Smith, their big senior point forward. I mean, he did it all. He distributed the ball. He shot threes. He crashed the boards. I mean, he did everything. So, it's hard to replace a player like that. So, like I said, I haven't seen their schedule yet, so not really sure what's going on with them. But I'm not surprised that they ended up in the tournament finals.
Corbin, I know you've seen a lot of South Pim over the years. Any thoughts?
Yeah, they've got the young man that plays the point for them, Farmer. He really does a great job pressuring the basketball and getting up underneath you and disrupting what you want to do offensively with his defensive pressure. I got a chance to watch some of that game and in preparation for this, and to be honest, Risco really controlled a lot of that game. It felt like it was going their way, and then Coach Day made some adjustments to what they were doing defensive pressure-wise. They were able to kind of push Risco's guards out a little bit, get them a little bit sped up, and kind of turn the tempo of the game more in their favor. And before you know it, despite the fact that it felt like Risco was controlling the game most of it, South Penn was able to reel off those big runs through their transition, which put them over the top.
Indeed, and a little bit of cool trivia. South Pemiscot is now coached by Travis Day. Coach Day, as a coach, has done had a lot of success in the area. He was at New Matter County Central for many years. I think he might have been at Hayti for a bit, and now he's at South Pim, and he's always done some good stuff wherever he's at, and he's doing it again down at South Pim. Switching gears a little bit, the Poplar Bluff Mules went up to Waynesville over the weekend and played in the Route 66 shootout. Got a pair of nice wins. It was a good week for the Mules. I think they were 3-0 last week. They beat Saxony Lutheran, I believe, last Monday. And then they beat Capital City, and I got to find the other school they beat. But, that's some nice momentum because they're going to be going into the showdown on a 3-game winning streak. We are going to talk about the showdown in a little bit, and that's going to be kind of fun. But that's a nice start for them. Another big thing that's been going on of late has been the Lady Royals Christmas Classic. We're taping this before that finishes, but in the first 2 rounds so far, the Donovan Donettes have been doing Donovan Donette things, and they have been dominating people. Mark, go.
Yeah, I'm looking for any kind of news for this. Misha doesn't have any updated scores, and of course you can't access anything locally that's not behind a paywall, so you probably know more about this than I do.
Well, I can tell you that the Donovan Donettes, like I said, they have won their first 2 games really big. We're taping midday Monday. They are slated to play Rector in the semifinals. This will be, of course, after, before the show airs. But, Donovan has basically done nothing to convince anybody they're not going to win this tournament going away, because they have dominated this tournament for years, just like they have dominated all of Southeast Missouri. We were talking earlier, the Donettes and Adam Epps, they're just in another gear.
Yeah, and Adam hasn't built that program, just to get a chance to get to the top. He's built that program to have sustained excellence year after year. And I think we talked about this last week. He's got juniors who have stepped up into the 2 leadership roles that his graduating seniors had vacated, and the freshmen and sophomores are making as much of an on-court contribution as the upperclassmen are, and that is a recipe for continued success.
It is. One thing I'm going to switch gears on a little bit. There was a big high school basketball game this past Friday up at Woodland when the Woodland Cardinals hosted the Dexter Bearcats in a Stoddard County Activities Association battle. And Woodland surprised a few people, since they're a smaller school. They won that game, won it in pretty dramatic fashion. Corbin, I think you were talking a little bit about that earlier. What are your thoughts?
Man, I look at the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament bracket, which we're going to get to, and, your top 3 seeds, Dexter, Puxico, and Bernie, are all out of the Stoddard County Conference. And then you throw, like you said, a team like Woodland in there. Going to be a heck of a year. That's always been a great basketball conference, but it's going to be an exceptional one, it sounds like. I feel like that both, obviously, Dexter is a larger school and some of these are smaller, but it's very well represented throughout, and there's a lot of different styles of play as you start looking at that. And Woodland's obviously got a chance to make a deep run at this thing. So
Woodland's off to a pretty legit start. They beat Bernie, about a week ago at Bernie. They beat Dexter at home. Woodland's looking pretty good. That conference had 4 teams win district titles last year. Richland won a district title in Class 1, Puxico in Class 2, Woodland in Class 3, Dexter in Class 4. We could see that again this year. Bell City's looking pretty good in Class 1. Puxico's looking pretty good in Class 2, though they are in a very tough district. They're going to have to earn it. Woodland's looking really good in Class 3. Dexter's looking like they can make some noise in Class 4, so we could have a repeat of that. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently, talking about how Stoddard County basketball used to be down. It's anything but down now. It is some of the best in the area.
And one of the things that I really love about high school basketball as compared to high school football, and as we've been having a pretty vigorous debate about college football, is that the size of the school doesn't matter as much when it comes to basketball. We have a lot of really talented teams at Class 1, 2, and 3, even 4 in football. But once they get to the state sectionals, they're going up against schools that just, even if they're the same size, they have a lot more resources than those do. And the only resource that you need for basketball is a hoop and a ball, And if you've got kids who are fast and tall, and especially kids who can shoot from the outside, that 3-point line it's the great equalizer between the Davids and the Goliaths. And I just love the fact that you don't have to have a big athletic program and a huge budget in an urban area to have a successful basketball team. It's one of the reasons why I'm really looking forward again this year to the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament, because you really see that out there on the court, how much talent these young men have out there.
And that is going to be a heck of a tournament, and we are going to talk about that when we get back, and we're going to do that right after the break here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Three Rivers College women's basketball coach Alex Wiggs, and you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And we are back on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle, and we are getting ready to do our deep dive into the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament and the Poplar Bluff Basketball Showdown. Bloomfield's tipping off Friday morning. First game is at 10 o'clock Friday morning. Dexter is taking on Corbin's alma mater, Holcomb, followed by the 8-9 game between East Carter and Kennett at 11:15 a.m. Number 4, Van Buren takes on number 13, Richland at 12:45. And then the last game in the early bracket is number 5 Malden taking on the number 12 host Bloomfield Wildcats at 2:15. We pick back up at 3:45 Friday afternoon with number 2 Puxico taking on 15th-seeded Gideon. Number 7 Risco takes on 10th-seeded East Prairie at 5 p.m. 3rd-seeded Bernie takes on number 14 Donovan at 6:30. And wrapping up the day, the number 6 Twin Rivers Royals will take on number 11 Portageville at 8 o'clock. That's a full day, guys, and I'm going to let you guys dive into that. Corbin, you've been in this tournament before. I will let you dive in, man.
Yeah, man, this is just something that's always been a really special tournament to me. I had a chance to compete and win as a part of the staff at Hawcom in the championship in 2012 and made it back as a head coach in 2020 where Dexter got us. And I remember just growing up and going with my dad and just a lot of special memories there. So this is a really special event. But as far as this bracket goes, like I said, it's top-heavy with the Stoddard County Conference. I think all 3 of those teams, Dexter, Puxico, and Bernie, are all real threats to win this thing for a variety of different reasons, which we can get into. They play a little different style, each of them. When you look down through it, the bottom half especially is just loaded. A lot of different teams could come out of that. And there's some tricky stuff at the top as well. So I'm excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, one of the fun things about this, are the possible upsets. I like that East Carter against Kennett game. It's the 8-9 seed is always interesting. I think Richland has a puncher's chance up against Van Buren. Richland is always sneaky good. TRCC I should have had more coffee this morning.
I understand that.
Three Rivers alum Mike Kilgore, who's the head coach at Malden, has his squad rolling again. But Bloomfield being the host team, they're gonna really put up a fight there. Again, man, Puxico was so good last season. So I mean, you wouldn't be at all surprised to see them square off against Dexter, but none of this. But I mean, I like Puxico a lot in this tournament. I'm drawing a lot on last year, but East Prairie was terrific last season at this tournament. Risco's going to be tough. Donovan, I mean, they're a 14 seed, but as I was saying to you guys during the break, I think part of that is due to the fact that they got off to a slow 0-3 start, and they've been playing much better ball of late, and they're really going to give Bernie a run for their money. I mean, don't be surprised if that turns out to be an upset. I haven't seen the Bernie team enough to predict, and they're always good. Obviously they're deserving of that number 3 seed. As far as the coverage. For me, because of my Christmas schedule, I'm not going to be able to cover the tournament until the very end. But boy, do I have some great games to cover on that. I'm doing the consolation bracket roundup on Monday, December 29th, and that's going to include game number 20, leading into the end of that consolation bracket, and then the 2 featured games that I'm going to cover that night are the 2 winners bracket semifinals.
Those are going to be good.
And this tournament's a lot like the conference championships in the NFL. The AFC Championship, NFC Championship are usually much better games than the Super Bowl ever is. And I think a lot of times that's true for this tournament. Is those big semifinal games are really where you get just the great competition. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, unfortunately, our sports editor gets the 3rd place game in the championship game on Tuesday night, and that leaves me as the freelancer with the consolation championship as well as the 5th place game. But I'm sure those are going to be terrific as well. So I'm always happy to be able to cover this tournament. And we talked about the experience for the players and the coaches. This is one of the very best experiences for local print media. There's a fantastic hospitality room that Bloomfield puts up for us. There's plenty of space to cover the game from the stage. If you've never been to Bloomfield High School, I mean, it's a really small gym. If you want to see one of the games, you're probably going to have to get there early enough to see the game before it because it is really crowded, but it's definitely worth your time. It's just going to be a great tournament, and can't wait for it to start.
Corbin, what are some games that stand out to you? Tell me about some of these matchups that pop out to you the most.
Yeah, East Carter and Kennett's got an interesting dynamic there, a little bit of small school versus bigger school action, but I watched some film on East Carter, and they've really got some size that I think can create some issues. I think Kennett's going to need to be able to try to apply a little defensive pressure. You know, we used to always say the best post defense is to prevent the ball from getting in the post, especially when you have matchup problems. And I think Kennett's got the ability to push them out a little bit. Who can win that battle, how well East Carter handles the ball and can get the ball to Bryce Stahl, number 24. He's a handful in there. That one stands out. When you look at, like Mark was saying, East Prairie always seems to play well in this tournament, and I'm just a huge proponent this year and every year of Coach Blankenship and the Risco Tigers, so that 7-10 game really stands out as an intriguing one. Yeah. They are so fundamentally sound. They run their stuff. They play all the time at Risco, so they're always just fun to watch. I'm really interested to see who wins that 7-10 game. So
I am too. It's going to be a good one. You know, it's going to be fun to watch. You know, one thing that's interesting, especially if you have a Puxico-Dexter rematch in the championship, there were a lot of people that thought Puxico should have got the number 1 seed in that tournament. That could be a little bit of motivation for the Puxico Indians. That Puxico Indians team is not bad this year. They, you know, we're taping this before the big game, you know, Monday night over at Sykeston. But, you know, coming into that game, they were undefeated. They got a really nice win over Thayer that was a third-place team in Class 3 this past season. You know, they've been winning big, and, you know, they lost a couple of guys from last season's team, but they've added, you know, some guys too. They've been doing some nice stuff. You know, Jed Hancock's been bombing threes. Landon Burchard's been doing Landon Burchard things. And they have added another player too. I want to say his name is Colton Stroud. And he's been making some noise. And the whole team's been making some noise.
I think tempo's a big thing with Puxico. You know, Coach Fernetti has always been one that really wants to get up and pressure and get the game going fast. And we saw that some last year in the championship against Dexter, the contrast of styles. And now they've got a lot of work to do to make it back. Like I said, Bernie and multiple other teams will have something to say about that. But, you know, I feel like their ability to really create an up-tempo style game plays in their favor. So if you're going to be able to beat the Indians, you really need to be able to beat them in the half court.
Yes, and another big tournament that's going to be coming up soon is the Poplar Bluff Basketball Showdown. This is the 38th edition of the Showdown. That's always been a really nice tournament. There have been some ridiculously good teams and good players that have came through that tournament over the years. There's been several players that have played in that tournament that have went on to the NBA and the NFL. The biggest name, of course, or I would say the two biggest names being Poplar Bluff's own Tyler Hansbrough, you know, his younger brother Ben Hansbrough, but also, you know, all-star guard Devin Booker with the Phoenix Suns. You know, he played in the Showdown back in 2012. Some other names that have came through there. William Avery that, you know, did some big things at Duke in the late 1990s, played a little bit in the league. R.W. McQuarters, you know, played in that tournament in the mid-1990s, went on to play, you know, defensive back in the NFL for many years with the 49ers and Chicago Bears. Jamal Anderson, the defensive end, not the running back, played in the tournament and had a few years in the league as a defensive end for the Atlanta Falcons. You know, Coney Ely, you know, that, you know, played over in Matter County Central, went on to play for Mizzou, and, you know, had a 3-sack performance in the Super Bowl with the Carolina Panthers. He played in that tournament. So there's been some really nice names that have came through there, and it's going to be another fun tournament this year. It kicks off on the 29th. Corbin, you work at Poplar Bluff High School. I'm going to let you get some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're excited to host the Showdown like always. I'm really excited to see, hopefully, you know, this year, a lot of years that's kind of overlapped more with the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament. This year it's been backed up a little bit to the 29th, so basketball fans in the area will have more opportunity to go to Bloomfield and see the majority of that before the Showdown even gets started, since our championship there at PBHS will not be until New Year's Eve. So excited about that opportunity, hopefully to get an even bigger crowd out. A lot of talent coming into this thing. Multiple guys are going to end up going on to play Division I basketball. I can tell you that. And we're excited for the Mules. You know, we feel like a group that has got a chance to make some noise in this thing, and they've obviously just had a great weekend. we'll talk more about that as we get going. I know.
Indeed.
It looks like, if my geography is right, you've got teams coming in from Tennessee, Illinois, and Arkansas, as well as Missouri. Am I leaving anyone out?
Tennessee, yeah. So Maumelle from Arkansas. You've got First Assembly Christian and Memphis Central, obviously from Tennessee. Urbana's from Illinois, and of course we got Jonesboro down in Arkansas. So yeah, multiple states represented. And that always gives it some flavor to give some different styles of basketball and some different, representation across the entire region, not just Missouri.
Right, and I think that's one of the things that distinguishes the showdown from the Bloomfield Christmas tournament is it's more of like interstate matchups, and a chance to see some really talented basketball players from other schools that you wouldn't normally see over the course of an in-state basketball schedule.
Sure, and that, just like Mike was saying, just a really rich tradition of high-level talent coming through the showdown. And there's some more coming back this year, so we'll get to talk about that in a few minutes.
I think the only thing that's not fair for you coaches and players is that you don't get much of a Christmas break when you're when you're playing these tournament games. What was that like for you when you were coaching?
Yeah, I told my family last year was my first year out of it since I got out of college, and I've told people since then that it was I miss game nights, I miss competing, but it was so nice to actually get to take a break in terms of actually enjoy the holidays. Because we were always, especially when we were going to Bloomfield, we were always practicing right up until Christmas Day. We practice on Christmas Eve every year.
Wow.
Some of those teams, believe it or not, I knew coaches up there for years that did practice on Christmas Day. Mamas and daddies weren't real happy about that sometimes. But that does happen, and kudos to all of these guys. It's Coach Brown and Coach Nicholson right now at Poplar Bluff High School, but the staff at Bloomfield was always first class. Those guys got to come up there and spend a great deal of their holiday getting this ready for the entire area to enjoy these events. So I think focus and distractions of the holidays can be a bigger separator than most people realize. Are your guys locked in and ready to focus on basketball over this holiday break? Because it's not just the holidays. All their buddies and all their friends from that have maybe graduated. Everybody's back from college.
Right.
You've got a lot of things that you may not think about that can be distractions, and who's the most locked in has a lot to do with it.
Indeed. And, who are some teams in this year's showdown that stand out? I know you got some information on that, Corbin.
Yeah, so Memphis Central out of Memphis is putting together one of the best seasons over there. If high school basketball in Memphis is kind of religion over there. It's a huge deal. They've had so many great players come through there. Memphis Central's 12-0 right now.
Nice.
Undefeated. And, of course, they're not playing cupcakes, guys. They're playing top-end competition. They've got three players of note that you're going to see, I'm sure, at the collegiate level. A.J. Polk is the athletic, shifty point guard. His recruiting profile kind of blew up down in Atlanta at the Peach Jam, which is one of the bigger circuit tournaments in the country. He picked up an offer from Tennessee State, and I'm sure that offer list is going to grow. He'll be a Division I player. Carlos Fitzgerald, athletic left-handed wing, and then they have a 6'7" multi-level scorer in Davion Murray.
Wow.
So he's going to be a real handful. Also in the Memphis area in Cordova, you got First Assembly Christian. They've won 2 of the last 4 state titles in their classification. Wow. They're led by Marticio Hayes, who's a 3-star recruit and considered the 7th best player in Tennessee by 247 Sports. So they have a lot of talent as well. Another Division I caliber athlete is Jordan Harris out of Maumelle, Arkansas. He's the number 4 ranked player in Arkansas according to 24/7 Sports. Also a 6'7" power forward. He signed with Appalachian State to play football, actually. So,
wow.
But he's got a pretty extensive offer list, I believe, in basketball as well. So, those are some headlining names. But you got some other programs like Jonesboro down in Arkansas. I got a chance to coach down there, and Coach Swift has got a great program. They've won 7 state titles in the last 25 years.
Oh, wow.
So they've won a ton, and 3 of the last 5. So there's a lot of teams that can make noise in this thing. But that's some headlining names. Of course, to mention the Mules, Dallas Williams, number 4, a really versatile scorer, can score at all 3 levels, can create his own shot. Sammy Durden, Coach Will Durden's son, number 34, is a real handful in the high post, a great face-up and drive it, face-up and shoot it, really versatile offensive player. And then they've got 6'8" Justin Briscoe as well, who is kind of coming into his own, that gives them some real length.
So it sounds like Sammy's recovered from that season-ending injury from last year?
Yeah, it appears so, and he's just a great young man, and not just a great player, but just a great student-athlete. We're really glad to have him on our side there, so and it's great to see him back, because I know it really made an impact on the Mules season last year.
Oh, yeah, he's a dynamic player and a leader both on and off the court. So, yeah. Great to see him back on the team and healthy again.
Indeed, it's going to be some fun tournaments, with the Bloomfield Christmas Tournament, Poplar Bluff Showdown, Southeast Missouri Christmas Tournament, has some other Southeast Missouri teams in it. That's going to be a good tournament too. We're a little more based over around Poplar Bluff, but that tournament's got some pretty solid teams in it. I believe Jackson is the top seed in that tournament. Woodland's number 2. It's going to be interesting to see how Woodland does in that tournament. There's some other teams that are in that tournament. One of the better matchups, in that tournament, first round, Bell City and Chaffee is a 7-10 game. That's a rematch of the Orion Invitational Championship game in the first round of the Southeast Missouri Christmas Tournament. That's going to be a good one. Scott City, the 6th seed, takes on number 11 Advance in the first round. That's going to be another intriguing matchup. Advance, is 3-3. They're coming off a win over Bloomfield this past Friday night. They took third at the Orion Invitational. Got a nice upset over Westwood Baptist in the first round. So it's going to be fun to watch. We've got a lot of holiday basketball coming up, and it's, dive into it, dig into it. It's like a post-Christmas buffet after Christmas dinner. So it's going to be fun. And when we get back, we are going to talk NFL and college football here on the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
This is Three Rivers men's basketball coach Robert Kirby, and you are listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome back to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. And we are going to do a deep dive into college football because we just finished the first round of the college football playoffs over the weekend. And I know that Mark and Corbin and Kyle have a ton of thoughts that they're going to share with it. And I am going to let them have fun. And I'm going to hand the Mark back to Mike, or the Mike back to Mark, and they're going to go.
Yeah, okay. To recap, for those of you who maybe didn't get a chance to get the scores, Oregon walked all over James Madison with a 51-34 victory that wasn't nearly as close as that. Most of James Madison's points came in garbage time. Alabama, unfortunately, beat Oklahoma, but I hate Oklahoma, so that doesn't really break my heart in any way.
Ditto.
Ole Miss destroyed Tulane. Tulane did not belong on the same field with Ole Miss. And in the first game of the day was the best game of the day. Miami 10-3 over Texas A&M, and you're thinking that was a low-scoring game. That must have been boring. Couldn't have been farther from the truth. Those were two defenses who performed like heavyweight champions going at it in the center of the ring. And Miami emerged with a dramatic end zone interception on a fourth down touchdown attempt by A&M to tie it up at the end of the game. So where that brings us coming up here in the week after Christmas. So no college football playoffs this week. But from December 31st to January 1st in the Orange Bowl, we've got Oregon taking on 4th seed Texas Tech. Alabama takes on the 1 seed Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And oh my God, if Alabama wins that game, I think it might be the end of the world. We've got an SEC matchup in the Sugar Bowl. Ole Miss plays number 3 Georgia, and Miami takes on the defending college champions Ohio State. So 4 really good matchups. So let's start with that. Let's start with the quarterfinals, Corbin. Tell me what stands out to you there.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me a couple years ago that I was looking at a college football playoff bracket where number 9 seed Alabama would be a touchdown underdog to number 1 seed Indiana, I would have thought that I was in the twilight zone. But that's what we're looking at here. And that is a fascinating matchup. I feel like even though Indiana is rightly favored, Alabama has got an overall talent level that has a chance to give them some issues there. But that's a very intriguing matchup. Texas Tech, has not really played anyone of any of these teams' caliber. I like what I see from them as far as athletically, but I really don't know what we're getting into there with Texas Tech and Oregon.
That looks like the biggest mismatch to me, especially at a neutral site. I think
Yeah.
Oregon's going to win that game by a lot.
Yeah, I think that's very much a possibility because the best team they've played is BYU, and I don't think BYU is near the caliber of these teams. So, and down Ole Miss, Georgia, that's really intriguing with Lane not there anymore. Will Ole Miss be able to have answers for that much improved Georgia defense? I'm not sure. I really like Georgia at the bottom half of this bracket. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but Miami, Ohio State. I think that's going to be closer than the 9.5 spread. Just to be honest, and the reason being is I felt like Indiana's pass rush was the first time Julian Sain had really had to get moved off his spot and be uncomfortable. And I thought that really affected them in that Indiana game. And I think with Mesidor and Bain, Miami's going to be able to create a lot of those same issues for Julian Sain.
Yeah, and Texas A&M has had a really dynamic offense all season, and Miami just completely shut them down.
Yeah.
Their defense was really impressive. Kyle, what are your takeaways going into the quarterfinals?
Well, I got to tell you this right now. Reuben Bain Jr. for Miami, that's a man child. I'll be the first to. And his father did play for the Hurricanes, Tolbert Bain, but he's not even the best defensive player left in the CFP. That's Texas Tech's Jacob Rodriguez, who should have been a Heisman finalist, if you ask me. Best linebacker to come out of that school since Zach Thomas. And Texas Tech is winning this game. And most people, when they hear the name Texas Tech, they usually associate high wire offense. This is a team that runs the ball as well as they throw the ball. And keep an eye out for their quarterback, Baron Morton. Corbin, what you said about the Ohio State game, you know what? Dead on, because Mikel Kamara and that Indiana pass rush were the only team to make Julian Sain uncomfortable because Ohio State hasn't played anyone this year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is anyone else looking at their schedule at the start of the year said, Penn State fell apart. Credit to them for turning the ship around a little bit, but they weren't what everyone said they were going to be. Yeah. They did not play Oregon this year. They did not play Indiana this year. Like, what are we doing? This schedule is buns. And
go ahead.
And bottom line, he never got tested because look at the weapons around him. Are you kidding me? Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. You got an emerging running back in Bo Jackson. I know, if you know, because Bo knows. But again, that team had not been challenged at all this year. And I said they're not what their record says they are. The Georgia Ole Miss game, those two battled earlier in the year in Athens, and Georgia won that, had to make a big comeback late. I love Trinidad Chambliss and the way that team has been able to galvanize without Lane Kiffin, but Georgia finds ways to win games. It's not pretty, but Gunnar Stockton and those boys, they find ways to get it done. So I have Georgia in that game. Alabama's getting smashed by Indiana.
Well,
period.
I sure hope you're right about that. Now, I don't want to spend 20 minutes on it. No one wants to listen to 20 minutes on it, so let's keep this as brief as possible. But Corbin and I were talking during the break, and we did agree that James Madison and Tulane did not belong in this tournament. Both of those games would have been better had Texas and Notre Dame been put in that position. Now, Kyle, you were making a pretty passionate argument about allowing the mid-majors to participate in the tournament, but justify that argument. These teams are just not as talented as the ones on the top. So what do we do to improve the level of competition in the college postseason and make it meaningful?
There's nothing you could really do to justify or to change the fun or change the level of competition, because no matter what happens, all of these kids get scooped up by the bigger programs. No matter what, it always happens. However, why do these kids go to these schools to play football if they're being told from the time they arrive, you're not worthy? How demeaning is that? We don't do this in any other collegiate sport but FBS college football. Why have the goalposts been getting pushed back basically since 1984, if I bring up some facts, that the only non-power program at the time to win a national championship was 1984 BYU. Why? And they were in the WAC at the time. Why do we keep pushing the goalpost back? What did Boise State fight for all those years? Upsetting teams, beating Georgia in the Georgia Dome, beating Georgia at Georgia, beating Virginia Tech at the Commie Skins Stadium. Corbin, if you don't understand it, referees, you got to keep up with my language.
Okay, Corbin, respond to that.
Well, I think a lot of what you said at the beginning is, I think it's a product of the reason why this is hard, and the reason it looks so bad, I think, is it's a product of the sport in itself. And the way these teams build their rosters being somewhat broken, like it's very hard to build a roster as good as Boise State had built in those years because now, like you said, if you have those studs that are going to end up in the NFL that go to a James Madison or a Tulane, they're going to get scooped up after 1 year. So it's even more of a mismatch, in my opinion, than it used to be. I would be a proponent of separating it and having a separate playoff for them. As far as a group of 5 national champion, I know that, like I said, you disagree with that, and I respect that opinion. I just feel like I'm like you. I don't want them to feel like they don't have a championship to play for. I just don't see any end in sight for these being blowouts.
I have a radical solution to this. Obviously, the NCAA is completely useless. I mean, they have lost all control. And the problem is clearly money. These big programs have a lot more NIL money to throw at these kids. They're essentially paying for players. So let's be honest about this. Let's pull the lid off all of it. Let's sell the entire system. I mean, from top to bottom, sell the entire system to the National Football League. Let them assemble it in the same way that Major League Baseball has it with Class A, AA, AAA, and then put salary caps on everything. Bring parity to college football in the same way that we generally see it in the National Football League. Now, this all pipe dreams. Nothing like this is going to happen in any of our lifetimes. But unless you solve the money problem, the big boys are going to continue to be the big boys. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, if you were a 5-star recruit, why would you even listen to anyone who wasn't in Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan,
Now, Sandman, let me ask you this. Now, say a program. Now, granted, Indiana, like Kurt Cignetti's done a phenomenal job, which, by the way, shout out to Cignetti, not just for what he's done at Indiana, but what he's built at JMU. This is only their 4th year as an FBS program, and they're dominating my conference, the Sun Belt. So his effect is wonderful. However, let me ask this: for programs that are in the power conferences but still get looked down on like they are nothing, like a Northwestern, like right now Boston College, although they have a great history, they won 2 games this year. Do they still get that same level of credibility and respect if they were to have a turnaround like Indiana, or are people going to put their fingers in their chest and say, yeah, but you're still you? Well, I honestly feel like to a point, Missouri's like that to a point.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the reality. You can't just be a 1-year wonder. I mean, if Northwestern goes undefeated next season and wins some really big games, that would be great. They would probably make it into the tournament, but they're not going to coast on that reputation in year 2 or year 3. They're going to have to consistently prove it year after year to get the same kind of respect as an Alabama who gets in the tournament even though they're not really qualified to be in the tournament, and then they go in, win a game and have a chance to win the second game. It's like, I think one of the reasons why Bama gets picked is because Bama wins all the time. Corbin?
As Shannon Sharp said, Corbin's apologies, but as Shannon Sharp said, the CFP is the Alabama Invitational. Carry on.
Feels that way.
Well, one note I had here that has been interesting for me to keep up with on Indiana throughout the year, and I think is really interesting for what it means for the future of the transfer portal and how these teams acquire players. Bud Elliott with CBS Sports has something called the blue chip ratio. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but in long story short, it's just there are certain teams that have more 4- and 5-star players than non-4- and 5-star players. That list is pretty select. There's only a handful, But since the advent of recruiting rankings, there has never been a team that had more non-4 and 5 stars than 4 and 5 stars win the national title. Indiana would blow that out of the water. Indiana's nowhere even close to that. So they are by far the best team to not meet that ratio, which is going to signify a lot of change in college football of, hey, we can do this through the portal if we knock it out of the park. We've also seen it backfire with Florida State and some other teams in the recent years. But if you hit it out of the park, some of these other teams can do it without stacking elite high school classes, and that's going to be a massive change on the national scene of college football.
I'm a big believer in 5-star culture over 5-star talent, big time.
Right.
Because a lot of the transfers that came to Indiana, with the exception of a Mendoza who came from Cal, which by the way I wanted at Mizzou, all comes from James Madison. And another example of 5-star talent over culture, or culture over talent, Ahmad Hardy at Mizzou.
Yeah,
right.
He was a 2-star. And Missouri's last 3 running backs that they've had, 3 of their last 4 running backs they've had in rotation are all Sun Belt transfers.
Yeah, and
So
that's
possible.
But that's how Missouri has to build their roster. I mean, they have to be able to recruit these transfers, because they're not getting, right now at least, they're not getting the same 4 and 5-star athletes as Bama and Georgia and Ohio State are going to get. They're just not. So they have to hustle and they have to work harder, to get that talent. Let's go ahead and put a bookmark in that. We will come back in a couple of weeks. It'll take a couple of weeks for us to get to the point where we're talking about the college football quarterfinals. But let's look at the Week 17 schedule in the NFL. We have 3 games on the slate for Christmas Day, 3 Thursday games. So if you enjoyed football with your Thanksgiving turkey, you're going to get even more football with your Christmas ham. We start off with a completely meaningless game, Dallas at Washington. We've got Detroit at Minnesota, which loses a lot of its cachet because we don't know yet if J.J. McCarthy is going to be able to play with that injured hand. And but if the Vikings could somehow pull the home upset over Detroit, that's going to knock the Lions out of the playoffs. And then,
that's a must-win for the Lions.
Absolutely. And then Denver's second string is probably going to beat Taylor Swift and the cast of the Eras Tour, because that's all Kansas City has left healthy to play the game.
Indeed. After that, of course, we're taping on Monday. But yesterday it got so bad, for the Chiefs down at Nissan Stadium that, I thought I saw Taylor Swift on the sidelines throwing some warm-up tosses with Travis Kelce, because if Kansas City's third-string quarterback that got forced in the game, if he had gotten hurt, they were going to have to give Taylor a jersey and let her start throwing some passes.
I have to give Taylor a shot. I know Mike and Kyle aren't fans, but I am. I'm a total Swiftie. So they showed her talking about football. When she met Travis, she did not know anything about football. And then she said, and now at her point, she's like breaking down the injury list for the 49ers in the week upcoming. It's just hilarious. Totally into that. Our Saturday matchups, that's something else we see at the end of the season. Houston at the Chargers. And then Baltimore, I lost track. Did Baltimore beat the Patriots last night?
No, they did not. The Patriots came back.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's Baltimore's out of it then, and they're probably not going to beat Green Bay at home. Man, even without Micah Parsons, Green Bay's defense is just nasty. I know the Bears had a really improbable win over the Packers, and I'm glad to do that because I'm always happy to see the Packers lose. But their defense is just so amazing. Corbin, what do you think? Any comments on the 5 games that we've looked at so far?
Well, I've really been a big fan of Dan Campbell and the Lions, and for whatever reason I continue to overestimate them, I guess, because every time I pick them, they continue to let me down here recently. So I'm really interested to see if they can sneak into the playoffs, because even though they've had some struggles lately, that is not who you want to see as a playoff matchup with Jahmyr Gibbs, Montgomery, Amon-Ra and those guys. That's not what you want to see if they sneak in there as a lower seed. That's what really stands out to me.
The Vikings team has just been destroyed by injuries, and I think if JJ can't play and they start Max Brosmer, I think Detroit should win that game easily. And Minnesota needs to lose this game, and they need to lose next week to Green Bay. We need to solidify a top 12 draft pick with a 7-10 season, especially if McCarthy doesn't play anymore, and we've talked all season about McCarthy's future, which is, with this latest injury, up in the air more than ever. So let's run through the Sunday slate. Lots of meaningless games. Arizona at Cincinnati, nobody cares. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. Here we are at the end of the season, and we keep waiting for Pittsburgh to fall off the cliff, and they just keep winning.
Pittsburgh annoys the hell out of me. That is not a good football team, and you cannot convince me. Dang it, I'm so glad I'm not sick anymore. I got my voice back. They're the Twinkie of the NFL that can survive a nuclear blast.
Yeah.
That's what the Pittsburgh Steelers are. You can't kill them. They're not good, but they somehow survive. You know what? Browns for the upset.
Over under 34.5. My goodness.
Browns for the upset because I'm fed up. I'm sick of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got buddies who are Steelers fans that go full Yinzer mode and are like, Steelers gonna win the Super Bowl. Like, oh, good Lord. It's like being the valedictorian of a class of 4.
That's funny. New Orleans travels to Tennessee. You guys just keep winning games that you should be losing. What is your problem? You're going to end up picking 7th or 8th in the draft at this rate.
Stop winning.
Well, the thing is, if we're winning, it says maybe we're not as bad as people thought, and we may not be in as dire need of, getting a number 1 or number 2 pick. But, I wouldn't consider this one to be an automatic win. The Saints have been playing some pretty good football themselves. We're going to have to earn this one. And we play at Jacksonville week 18. And the Jaguars may be playing for something because after beating the Broncos on this past Sunday, they could very well be in contention for the number 1 seed, or at the very least, possibly the number 2 seed, which would mean, a home game in the divisional round. So the Titans, I wouldn't say that we're going to get on a winning streak and win our last 3 games. We could easily lose both of these games. However, I'm still...
Oh, you're going to lose to Jacksonville. Jacksonville could go to the AFC Championship.
Well, no joke. They're my Super Bowl sleeper out of the AFC.
Mine, too. The thing that's going to be interesting with that Jacksonville game is, will they be having something to play for week 18? Right now, there's a good chance they will. But it's going to be interesting. But again, I'm still enjoying the fact that we got that nice win yesterday. Even if it did knock us down in the race for the top pick, it was still nice to get that win. We looked really good. Cam Ward has been coming on. He has proved he is the future of this team at quarterback. Things may be fun to watch the next few years in Nashville.
Yes, I'll give you guys credit. You played a great game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's my hot take on New Orleans. They're not going to draft a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft.
No,
they've got their starter in Tyler Shuck.
I think so.
Yeah.
As crazy as it sounds, because everyone roasted him. The Saints just drafted a 30-year-old rookie. All your elderly rookie quarterback jokes. And no, he looked, despite the fact the Saints are 29th in scoring, he looks sharp. He has command of their offense. They do have some nice pieces to work with. Or for him to work with. And Kellen Moore, say what you will about the Saints roster and their cap situation, Kellen Moore could possibly get the ball rolling in New Orleans. And everyone said, why did y'all draft draft Jackson Dart or draft Shadur and they took Tyler Shuck? It's not looking too terrible right now.
Because Kellen Moore knows what he's doing. Who else knows what he's doing is I can't think of his last name. Liam, the head coach at Jacksonville.
Liam Cohen.
Liam Cohen, thank you. Yeah, Liam Cohen. He has unlocked expert level on Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is playing up to his potential finally. Jacksonville, I think, is going to beat Indianapolis. I mean, they're peaking at exactly the right time this season. Which is, how many times have we seen that? A team that was just sort of playing 500 until about week 12 or something, and then they just turn it on and carry that momentum into the playoffs.
Jacksonville's looking excellent. Trevor Lawrence, although statistically he doesn't have the best numbers this year, they're winning games. He's not beating the team with turnovers.
Right.
He was, you got to remember, too, that Trevor Lawrence was a victim of a very dysfunctional situation when he came in with Urban Meyer.
Of course, and then Doug Peterson and all that.
And, it was just so probably his development was stunted somewhat. But, heck, Trevor Lawrence was as good a prospect as we've seen in the league since he was probably up there on his draft grade with what? Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning,
Andrew,
level.
and Elway.
Yeah, can't miss. Speaking of can't miss draft picks, got Baker Mayfield still trying to steer Tampa Bay single-handedly into the playoffs. They're going to be taking on a Miami team, battle of Florida teams. I still think Baker is going to try to sneak them into the playoffs. Of course, they're a game behind Carolina now, but I believe their last week game is against Carolina. So if they can win these last two, they can still get in as NFC South. So I'm going to take Tampa over Miami.
If they don't beat Quinn Ewers, all the injuries in the world that Tampa has been fighting against this year, and God bless Baker, he is pulling that team as far as he can with all the injuries to key players. But their only shot is to win the division. And you go, and if you were to ask somebody on the street and just say, you have to pick Carolina or Tampa Bay, they're probably going to take Tampa because at least they know there is an established known commodity in Baker Mayfield. Yep. We don't know if Bryce Young could be that guy, but again, Tampa's been fighting uphill all year, but they should beat Miami.
Are we not? I don't mean to get off in the weeds here, and Mike, you may have a thought on this, but are we not past the time, or does anyone disagree with the fact that we need to reseed the playoffs after the first round?
My
goodness. I was watching that just banger of a game between the Seahawks and Rams, and I'm like, one of these teams is going to be seated behind the Panthers?
Yep.
I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Don't remind me, Corbin, I don't know if you know, but I've been a Rams fan for 30 years. I don't know if the guys told you about me. I'm going to blame that game for why I wound up getting a fever over the last 3 days.
That was the dumbest 2-point conversion I've ever seen.
Really,
that should not have counted.
No, and and the rule is, you cannot advance a recovered fumble.
Yeah.
So that play should have stayed dead. Speaking of dead, the New York Jets host the New England Patriots, who are favored by 13.5 points, and they'll probably win by twice as much as that. Here's a really fascinating game: Seattle at Carolina. Of course,
that's going to be a good one.
Seattle's the number 1 seed, but Carolina is not a fluke. They're winning good. They're not winning lucky. And this looks to me just like the kind of game where Sam Darnold goes full blue screen of death, and Carolina ends up winning that game at home.
I absolutely can see him start seeing ghosts again. Carolina, again, are they a proven commodity with the current NFL climate? No, but watching the way they win football games this year, they're a bend but don't break defense. They run the ball extremely well, and they might have the most under talked about running back in the NFL, Rico Dowdle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
People need to pay more attention to what Dave Canales has done with the Panthers this year. Bryce Young is not beating the team. He's making the throws when he needs to. Now, if he only imagined every team was the Atlanta Falcons, he'd be the league MVP right now.
New York Giants play at Las Vegas, so if you have the opportunity to watch that game, you can see what it looks like when both teams are trying to lose to maximize their draft capital.
It is the Las Vegas Toilet Bowl.
Philadelphia goes to Buffalo. Buffalo's winning this game at home. I just hope it's snowing. I hope there's about a foot of snow on the ground when that game starts. But Philadelphia doesn't look good. Even when they win, they don't look good. Of course, you could say the same thing about Buffalo squeaking out a 3-point win over the Browns. And then Chicago goes to San Francisco, and I'll tell you what, break out the Super Bowl shuffle. I'm a believer in Ben Johnson. I'm picking the Bears to go out west and beat the Niners.
Damn right.
I'm a believer. I really am.
Can I say something about the finish of that game? That throw from Caleb Williams.
Well, that was a dot.
Oh, my goodness.
The catch by DJ Moore. I mean, the way that he was able to hold on to that ball, there was about 4 different points from the catch to where he hit the ground where that thing could have just blasted right out. So credit on both ends of that pass.
No Bears quarterback in the history of that franchise has ever made a throw that good. Because they've never had a guy like that. But you're
too young to remember punky QB Jim McMahon. Now, McMahon could chuck it down the field.
Oh, no, he could, but he wasn't. Okay, yeah, and he wasn't asked too much.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, pulling up a text from our friend Scott Borkran, who's the biggest Bears fan on planet Earth. He said, I feel like I just watched something historical at the end of that game. And not only because of the way they won it, but who they beat to do so.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's like I don't hate the Lions. I definitely don't hate the Bears. I was a big Bears fan in '85, with Sweetness and the Fridge and McMahon and Ditka and the whole thing. I absolutely despise Green Bay. At no point do I want the Packers to win anything. So I absolutely want to pull for the Bears to win in the North. All right, Kyle, convince us that the Rams are not going to stub their toe against the Dirty Birds on Monday night this week.
I just can't have that. I can't have that. Not only for obvious reasons, this is a massive get-back game. My boss is a diehard Falcons fan. If we lose to Kirko Chains in 2025
you like
to
that?
End my year, no, I don't. You're gonna, he's gonna love a lot of Byron Young and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk is what he's gonna like, and he ain't gonna have a choice.
Well, this is
our get back game.
Yeah, this is a huge game because if Carolina upsets Seattle at home and you win, you're one step closer to securing that number 1 seed. It's just amazing to me that 3 out of the 4 teams in the NFC West are going to make it into the playoffs this season. It's just absolutely incredible. And something else that I love about this season, obviously I don't love that the 2 teams I follow the closest, the Vikings and the Chiefs, are already eliminated from the playoffs. But looking at the teams that are already in and the ones that are likely to be in, the league is as wide open as it's been since we had 2 quarterbacks named Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes playing in the playoffs. I mean, literally anyone in the playoffs practically could get to the Super Bowl and win it. And as a football fan, I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, you take Kermit out of the playoffs, it opens things up, Patrick Mahomes. So,
respectfully, but as I have told folks, Josh Allen will not have a better chance than now to get it done, and he is the only way that the Buffalo Bills will end this curse. Patrick Mahomes is down. You better throw your haymaker right now. But as I've said before, John Matthew Stafford is bringing me another ring.
It's going to be interesting. And that's our show for this week. We'll be back next week with some more stuff, hopefully some more holiday high school basketball. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders, and I'd like to thank Corbin Clark for joining us this week.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed it.
And back rolling is Kyle Roberts.
And you have been listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.